In this video, we will review the Flexera One SaaS Management Unmanaged SaaS Assets. Unmanaged assets represent SaaS tools that have been discovered across your environment but are not yet governed. These applications are surfaced in the Unmanaged SaaS Asset Workspace, which acts as a triage queue, allowing teams to review, validate, and decide how each application should be handled. From there, organizations can take one of the three actions: create a new application, map it to an existing application in the catalog, or ignore it if it is not relevant. This approach ensures that every discovered SaaS asset is intentionally evaluated and brought under governance, helping reduce shadow IT, eliminate duplication, and improve overall SaaS visibility and control. Let's take a look at the end-to-end process recommended for managing unmanaged SaaS assets. The first step in our end-to-end process is discovery. When discovery runs, connectors return a list of applications detected in the environment. For example, SSO connectors like Intra IT and Okta would return a list of applications users authenticate into, and CASB would return applications that have been accessed over the network. Our next step in the process is normalization. The discovered data is ingested by Flexera One SaaS Management and is matched against the Data Intelligence Service catalog. And if matched, it would become managed. If there is no match, it becomes unmanaged. The key rule in this stage of the process is that any discovered application that cannot be matched to the DIS becomes an unmanaged asset. This includes unknown applications not in the catalog, new applications discovered via CASB or browser discovery, name mismatches, which are very common with SSO applications because the application name in SSO can vary from the normalized name in the Data Intelligence Service catalog. Let's look at our next step, assessment. In this step, you will evaluate each application for usage, cost, security exposure, and compliance risk. The process usually starts with the following questions. Is this a legitimate business application? Does this application already exist in your SaaS catalog or the Data Intelligence Services catalog? Or is it just noise or low-value activity? This decision point is not automated. The system intentionally requires human validation for this step. Our final step is action. There are three actions available. The first one we will review is merge. This links unmanaged assets to existing DIS catalog applications. It consolidates users, activities, and usage data to the existing DIS application. This is used when the app already exists in your managed environment or it's just a naming or discovery mismatch. This is the most common and preferred path. When merging, you have two paths you can take. The first one is the preview path. Applications move to preview and progress. Upon the next data aggregation, users and activities are collected. Then move to preview ready status, where you can review total users, evaluate overlapping versus new users, validate activity data before committing. This preview option prevents bad merges and data pollution. The other merge option is a direct merge, which skips the review process and immediately maps the asset to a catalog application. There are no preview or validation steps required. This is often faster, but comes at a higher risk. Our next action is create a new application. Create a new application record can be DIS linked if available or a private catalog application. It's used when apps do not exist in the catalog or the application is internal, a niche, or a custom SaaS application. This gives you the capabilities to expand your managed inventory beyond DIS. Our last action is ignore application. This marks an app as not relevant, removes it from active governance workflows. It's used when low risk or non-business applications or noise such as social media, or test tools. This helps reduce data clutter and noise. Now that you have an overview of unmanaged SaaS assets and are familiar with the end-to-end process, let's take a look at how this works in Flexera One SaaS Management.
Hi everyone, so I will be presenting the unmanaged assets. Just to give you a quick background on unmanaged assets, because for some of you it might be slightly new. So the unmanaged asset view was created to provide a dedicated staging layer, for SaaS applications that were discovered but yet not governed or recognized in SaaS management. When I say recognized, we have a library of 26,000 SaaS applications, and we ensure only those application data is brought into the system. All the others are considered as non-business SaaS apps, right? So just being clear about what is a recognized application in SaaS. Now, these applications, of course, are recognized through multiple discovery sources, but mainly SSO and CASB, which represents a lot of that raw usage data, which sometimes may be incomplete, unverified, or inconsistently named. For example, from SSO, you could name it as internal underscore MS Teams, whereas in our catalog, it will be just Microsoft Teams, right? So since these are qualifiers we use, a lot of times they do not match. And most likely customers are very, very creative about their names in SSO, as we have seen. So that creates, those applications not being recognized, right? So to avoid polluting our main applications view, which is mostly about recognized applications, with those duplicates and noise and incorrect discoveries, we first surface this data in unmanaged asset, where you can review it intentionally and take the next necessary steps. So going into why this matters, what are the limitations today, and what is the value that we are bringing with this release, right? So one of the biggest challenge customers tell us today with the unmanaged asset is that, hey, just discovering these shadow apps is just not enough, right? Before this, the unmanaged applications were visible, but teams could not do anything about it. They had to chase down names, reconcile duplicates, and make decisions outside a SaaS, maybe export the table and then make sure that they qualify these applications. So with this release, we move from discovery to action. So unmanaged apps can now be managed in one place, using discovered data to drive decisions, right? So these are the decisions you need to make, whether this is a managed app or you want to take it as a managed app and you want to track it within your main application. The outcome is pretty simple in this scenario. Shadow SaaS comes under control. Applications move from unknown to governed and recognized, and this improves your audit and governance posture when you're talking with vendors. Next slide, please. This is like a screenshot of how it looks today. I just put it from the dev environment this morning. So this slide shows what customers can actually do today. Unmanaged applications can now be actively managed, which I'll show you in a demo shortly. From one place, teams can create these applications, map them to an existing apps that has already been discovered or is a part of the DIS catalog, or completely ignore these applications. Sometimes you don't want to track Facebook.com, but your CASB is giving you that data. So you can mark them as ignored so that you don't get that noise in your system anymore. So this helps resolve shadow SaaS. Instead of just discovering it, it reduces those duplication and the noise that is causing you a lot of that pain. All right, so I have the unmanaged assets section open right now. This is a dev environment, as I said. So this is very new if you have not seen this before. We have two sources of unmanaged assets today, SSO and CASB, from an application standpoint. Also, as an FYI, we are not considering subscriptions in this discussion. We are purely focusing on shadow applications. So we have introduced these two different data sets to be brought into unmanaged asset, as you can see in the table. We have different KPIs to indicate what phase of that application is currently in process, right? So for example, is it an unmanaged asset? Have I, asked for a preview? Have I already merged it? So that you can, go from unmanaged to managed. And there are a couple of steps as I'm going to show you soon. So these are the KPIs, those represent those steps. So if you are in this place, you can see there are a lot of applications that we have identified. By the way, this is our own environment, right? So this is the data that we are getting from CASB today. So, a lot of times Jira would be called Jira Spot because you have some organization related data coming through your, SSO, right? And this is how a lot of the companies do that as well. The main application section, which is the managed one. So this is where we want to reduce as much noise as possible. And we want to only track those SaaS applications that are relevant for us. And these are the places where we dump all the noise and make sure that we have that workflow to support that. Let me pull these apps and then convert them to managed so that I can also track the usage data for those apps, right? So that becomes a little bit more controlled rather than false positives. You basically make that change yourself depending on the data that you receive. So let me take Jira Spot as an example in this case as well, right? So today you can see we have 1359 unmanaged applications that we have received through these two sources, SSO and CASB. And then there are three actions that I can perform. One is to merge this application. Now merge means merge it with an existing DIS catalog application that may or may not have been identified through other sources or have been discovered through other sources, right? So let's say if you have a Jira application in your system, let me quickly find out. So you could Atlassian Jira, right? So that's the right name. That's why it does not match, right? So now you want to say, okay, I see an app which looks like Jira, but it's actually called Atlassian Jira in our catalog, which is identified. So let me merge this, right? And how I merge this is by clicking on the merge button. You can select Atlassian. You will be able to look for Jira, the one that you just saw, right? And then there are two more options that you can proceed with. One is preview application before merging. So what that does is once you hit submit, it's gonna pull in all your users data related to this application from the SSO, right? So until now, there's no pulling of users data. We don't want to expose that data. As I said, this is a controlled environment. We don't want to expose any data that is not supposed to be exposed because it's not part of our catalog. It might be risky, right? So we want to make sure that this is controlled. So you can hit preview and submit. So what happens is next time your SSO runs, it will not only pull the application, but also the users that are attached to that application from a user's perspective. And then it's going to bring it back to you. And what you can do is you can preview it, right? In that preview, I'm going to show you soon what you can do, how you analyze if that's the right application that you want to merge it with. The other option is for people who are very confident. I know 100% this is Jira Spot, right? So this is an application that I know about. I know it's supposed to be merged with Atlassian Jira. So I'm going to just directly submit it. So what happens is next time it automatically maps this application as Atlassian Jira, and then it becomes a part of the managed section. It'll still appear under the name Atlassian Jira, but then you have, map Jira Spot application with this new Atlassian Jira. So next time you have nothing to do with Jira Spot, right? Everything appears as Atlassian Jira. So that way we are creating that backend mapping to support that, and only DIS related name would appear in the system. So these are the two steps. Of course, we recommend customers to preview it, although you have to wait for some time, see the data and merge it. So it's a two-step process. This is one step, but this definitely prevents customers from making that mistake, and previewing rather than confirming it. So what happens once you hit the preview? It will basically go into previewing process. I'm not going to click it, but because it's going to take time. But we do have some applications that have already been, created or previewed. Have been triggered for preview so that you can see the data that is coming through the system, right? So let's pull in Atlassian Cloud in this case. And this is the preview section that I'm talking about, right? Very important to see this page has a lot of data, right? So you need to be very clear about what each of these data points represent so that you can make the right decision. So on your right-hand side, you can see the details, which is quite similar to what you see in the KPI. And then you see the previews of the application that has also been requested to be merged against that Atlassian Jira application, right? So that way, because sometimes For example, this one was Jira Spot. It could be Jira Flexera, Jira Snow software. So you want to map all of them to one. So you can also see that relationship being built. So that also gives you a good idea about what applications are mapped together with Atlassian Jira. And then the application detail about, where the source is coming from and so on, right? But the most interesting part is in this user preview, because as I said, we are pulling usage information. So application usage by a particular user within the organization. So you can see that the source user, which in this case is the application that we got from SSO, that one has 1156 users. The target users is the target application, which is Atlassian, which already has 1434 users currently. And then you can see out of those users, 900 are overlapping, which is good because that kind of also indicates that they are similar user using the same application. So that also helps you to make that decision. But you also see that there are 256 new users that you're pulling from this SSO, right? So, and this is very interesting as as somebody who wants to assess how this application usage is being currently pulled into the system, and you want to also map them to the license that it is attached to, because in the end, Atlassian Jira is attached to Atlassian license. You want to make sure that you are getting as much usage from different sources as possible. And this is exactly where it hits the mark, right? So this is where we see that, hey, by the way, SSO is saying you have 256 more users that your browser extension is not picking. I'm not going to go into the details of why or how, but you can see that this gives you some insights, right? And then you're going to individually assess these users that, oh, these are the users. Maybe they don't have a browser extension installed. Maybe their data is not coming in, right? But this is where this source provides that information to you. And this becomes really valuable, right? And you can see if you merge this, in the end, you're going to have 1690 users, and you can validate each of them, in your system. So source, target, both. I think these are very useful things to help you make decision, right? In the end. So this is where this preview page becomes really useful. Is that okay? Now I can see that what I'm expecting is what I'm getting. You do have a couple of options. The obvious one being is. So what happens after that is this application will be mapped to Atlassian Jira, and from next time this will appear in the application section, and all your new users will be attached to that application. That's the outcome you want. But you can also say that if you don't like this outcome, you can also go back to unmanaged and then try this again. Or to make it a little bit easy, you can also select that new application directly in here, right? So this is also allowing you to edit while you are previewing it. Or you can also create a new application. So this gives you as much flexibility as possible, but definitely changing the status and merging is the expected outcome. In the current scenario, these are a little bit too complicated because, you saw the workflow is slightly, not that easy, right? So the understanding might be different in this case. So I would say that's when you will completely merge this. And once that merge happens, then that application, which you just saw, would be then attached to Atlassian Jira. Atlassian Cloud would be attached to Atlassian Jira. And then you'll be able to see all those users coming into application section, right? So we are not creating this as a new application because, as I said, this is not part of our catalog, right? But we can extract the information and map it to the application that we know it is, supposed to show.
This concludes our review of the Flexera One SaaS Management Unmanaged Assets.